Joined this morning by Madison Police Chief Mike Koval. I was trying to read my lines off the teleprompter already just moments ago.
A lot of stimulation.
You're feeling comfortable enough here.
No, never. This is a face made for radio, remember, Adam. Okay, so let's be clear on that.
All right, so we've got some pretty serious subjects to talk to you about, which is why we're having you hanging here for 2 segments. So we know you can handle this. So we're going to go straight to the Tony Robinson decision. Many people have been waiting for this. What do you expect?
Well, I don't have anything in terms of insider trading in terms of the verdict, but we have been planning, fastidiously for the last 4 to 5 weeks in terms of an incident command. So there's sort of the tactical response to how we'll be dealing with crowds or those things thereabout. And then there's also working with leaders in the community, leaders of color, the African American clergy, and also many other outlets, including news outlets, to try to say, how can we move forward in the event of the verdict in having the long-term discussions that need to be had while not doing it from the standpoint of a fractured city. We
were talking in the commercial break about your blog, and we were complimenting, at least I know it's a bit of a challenge, but there was one line in there that you wrote that I particularly drew attention to. When you said, whenever there's a police action that results in the loss of a life, it's understood and entirely appropriate, everything should be scrutinized.
Yep.
What are you scrutinizing? I mean, the community is scrutinizing you, but what are you specifically scrutinizing?
Well, of course, we like to believe that we're on the cutting edge of some good training methodologies. But just today, I'm literally sending one of my training team out to Washington, D.C., where there's a consortium by the Police Executive Research Foundation, which is a clearinghouse, sort of our equivalent to a think tank of all things that are trending and how things can be better. So we don't want to stay static in terms of what constitutes best practice. We want to be at the forefront of that. And so we're always going to look at our training methodologies, we'll look at the policies, we'll look at the procedures. Everything is subject to that litmus test.
We're going to be going back and forth here, but when it comes to the community, Tony Robinson, we've seen what's happened in Baltimore, we've seen what's happened in Ferguson, and you've been forced into the spotlight. It's your job, but you're getting complaints from both sides. You're getting hit from both sides.
Oh yes,
you can't, in any position, you can't please everybody.
Nope.
It has to take a toll on you, Chief.
Well, it does. I have been sort of a punching bag for the last couple of months, which is okay, though, because at the end of the day, I would much prefer that venom, that criticism, be directed at me, myself, and I, as opposed to the 457 women and men who are providing such selfless service every day, every call, every hour. So I like to look at, back in the day, I'd get a box of Cracker Jacks. I wasn't much concerned about what was on the outside, the box. The packaging, that's me. But I was very intent on the caramel corn and the prize inside. The prize for this community is that we have a wonderful police department. You can deal with me as the packaging, but the product is what moves the needle, and our product is still very good.
We're going to talk about a couple of things, maybe packaging on that product, the topic of body cameras, and we'll be right back with more with Chief Koval. Welcome back to the program. We're joined this morning by Madison Police Chief Mike Koval. Thanks for sticking around.
You bet.
So you were just talking about the packaging. You used the analogy of Cracker Jack, that you're the packaging and the product inside. There's been a conversation about putting body cameras on all police officers right now. And I know you mentioned when you talked to the city council that it doesn't get at the problem. Talk to me about what that problem is and whether you think the solution can involve video.
Well, first of all, we do have video for some of the most contentious things we do. Traffic stops, recorded interviews of juveniles and adults, and SWAT operations. So it's not like we're starting from ground zero.
Okay.
But in terms of the issues of cameras have 2 things potentially. Transparency is the most obvious. But I think the thing that's the deeper issue is, does the camera in and of itself bring accountability? If we look at the Eric Warner video from out in New York, guy getting choked out, I would say high transparency, but up to this date, if you ask the constituents of that community, low accountability. So I'm a little concerned that cameras portend to be all that and then some, and yet I actually think that the relationship building at a ground level in the neighborhoods is ultimately more substantive.
If I can just follow up on that real quick. So you're thinking, would you prefer to see more officers on the streets than the money spent $900,000 on video camera? Would you prefer that be put into people?
That would be my predilection, but of course I'm governed by a Common Council group study that's being commissioned, and if they ultimately think that community sentiments mean that cameras are right here and now, then I have to be deferential to those findings.
What has Madison as a community learned?
From?
Let's talk about the Tony Robinson case, for example. You know, a young, gifted and black. They're very, very vocal. From Baltimore, from Ferguson, you know, we did not react that way. We have been lucky in that sense.
The chapter has been yet to be closed on that one point. I think at the end of the day, I think that in Madison there is less mistrust for their policing style. And I also think that, quite frankly, our issues are not as pronounced in terms of poverty as we see in Baltimore, where you have literally decades of that issue. And so I think there's a greater sense of community in terms of leaders, de facto entitled, talking to, working with institutional powers like the police.
We've got about a half a minute left.
Sure.
I wanted to give you an opportunity to correct any misconceptions that have been out there about you or about your department in light of the extra scrutiny over the last month or two. I mean, is there anything you really that's bugged you to the point that you want to clear it up right here, right now?
Well, I think the biggest thing is not so much for me, because I've been called a bully, defensive, and a racist. I think the biggest thing that bothers me is the racist card, because that is intrinsically offensive to me, and because it speaks such volumes to an issue that is fraught with peril. We do not have a racist police department here. We have a very good, professional police department of conscientious and willing, caring individuals. We do have to look at racial disparities and the role that law enforcement plays, but it's not owing to the racism of a police department that's run amok.
Madison Police Chief Mike Koval, thanks for being with us this
Thank
morning.
you very much.
We appreciate your time.